Really appreciate you taking the time to be here today. This is our third session of 6 with these trainings, and whether you've been with us for 35 plus years or you're a newer rep for us, it's definitely been a very successful and proven very helpful refresher for some people, and even for some of us who've been with Ward for many years. We're learning some new things about our company and how we're manufacturing some of our products, and maybe just history as well. I'd like to introduce Tim Murray. If you guys can see on the screen, he's probably on the top of the screen as well. You can wave at him, Tim. Many of you have known Tim. He was with our engineering department for over 6 years. He's in a new role now as our quality manager for Ward Manufacturing for all categories. He took over when Jim Belosky retired, and we're very excited to have him in this new role, and he's going to be presenting to us today. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Tim. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie. So I'm Tim Murray. I'm the quality manager here at Ward. I recognize quite a few names down across here. I think I've talked to many of you on the phone probably in the past 6 or 7 years. So welcome here this afternoon. We're going to go through a short presentation focusing on what our WARDFlex product line is and what the benefits there are to using that product for you as well as your customers. And then we're also going to touch a little bit on the history of Ward, as Jamie said, and go a little bit over what all we do here, not just our WARDFlex line. So if everyone will bear with me for a moment here, I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So today we're going to go over a brief overview of Ward manufacturing as a whole, talk about all the different facilities we have and products that we make here. And then we're going to talk a lot about WARDFlex and why WARDFlex there's benefits to using it, and why it's a nice product to have as part of your product offering for your customers. So Ward was established in 1924. Right here in Blossburg, Pennsylvania, which is where our main operations still reside today, as well as our main office here, our corporate offices. We also have a plant in Lawrenceville, Pennsylvania, which is where WARDFlex is made. And then we have a pipe nipple plant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which we've had as part of our organization since 2006. Among all 5 plants that we have, there are over 500 employees. That includes all of our sales team, as well as all the office personnel, the engineering department, and everybody here in Blossburg. So all of our facilities, with the exception of Ward Nipple, are ISO 14001 certified, which is an environmental standard. And then WARDFlex also has an ISO 9001 certification, which is a quality system standard. Here's a couple of photographs, just some aerial views of our plants, just so you get an idea of what we look like here. On the left-hand side here is Plant 1 and Plant 2. Plant 1 is our Foundry operation. That's been there since 1955. And then Plant 2 was formerly our machine shop. Now it serves as our stock room and also where we receive and inspect our raw materials here in Bloss. On the right is Plant 3, which is our machine shop, and then also houses our warehouse and shipping department. And in the front of the plant there is our corporate office right here. Here on the left is the WARDFlex plant. That's been there since around the year 2000 is when we built that. And all of our WARDFlex CSSP and fittings and accessories, it all goes through this plant before it comes to your facilities and your distribution centers. And then this is just a front view of the Ward Nipple plant in Milwaukee. So what all do we make here? As you know, here in Blossburg, we make pipe fittings, both malleable iron and cast iron pipe fittings, as well as unions. And then our ward locks and our T-locks fittings are made here in Bloss as well. We also have the ability to make custom castings, both casting only and then also as machine jobs, so we can do custom machining as well. We're not just a manufacturer of pipe fittings here. We actually make a wide range of custom parts ranging from little tiny bevel washers up to this cylinder head that you see here. And then a bunch of different types of fittings and manifolds and things like that that are used in boilers and gas systems, things like that. Our WARDFlex product line consists of our CSST, both yellow WARDFlex and black WARDFlexMAX. And then we have fittings and accessories that complete that product line to make it basically a turnkey product line for a residential gas system, and even in commercial buildings to some extent. Ward nipple, we make pipe nipples, so we basically take lengths of steel pipe, also brass and stainless steel pipe, and we cut them to length and thread them. And we have the ability to make custom lengths there as well, up through 6-inch diameter. And then we also offer through our Ward International line, we offer a line of malleable iron fittings as well as steel pipe nipples. Across the US, we have 22 sales agencies. Many of you are among those agencies here that are watching today. And then we have 4 in Canada, 5 stocking distribution centers in the US, and 1 warehouse in Canada. So here's just an overview of what topics we're going to touch on today. We're going to start by talking about the CSST tubing itself, what the benefits are to that, and what the main features are there and how it works. The next thing we'll talk about are the coatings. Again, we have a yellow coating and a black coating for our CSST product line. And then we're going to show a quick video and talk about the quality checks and the testing that takes place during the manufacturing process right up there at the plant. And then we'll switch gears and talk about the installation of the product a little bit, mainly the fitting installation, and we're going to show some examples of how that works, and then also what the seal inside that fitting looks like, so you get a good idea of what's happening in there when that's being assembled. And then we'll talk really quickly about the different accessories and fittings we have available and the advantages to using WARDFlex. We'll go over all the main points of the presentation, all the kind of the sticking points here. So the tubing that we sell, our yellow WARDFlex comes from sizes 3/8 inch up to 2 inch. And then the WARDFlexMAX product comes from 1/2 inch through 2 inch. Both sizes are available, or both types are available in a wide range of sizes, going from 26 feet, up to 1,000 feet. And then we can do custom lengths for all the sizes except for 1.5 and 2 inch. So if there's a certain size that's not on our price list that a customer needs, we have the ability to make custom lengths. We also have fittings that go along with each one of these sizes here. We have a full range of fittings. And then the tubing, the whole system, WARDFlex and WARDFlexMAX, carries third-party certifications. The main certification is through CSA, which is the Canadian Standards Association. And that is the body that certifies us to the standard for CSST, which is ANSI LC1. And then IAPMO and ICC, they list our product to that standard, as well as to many of the model building codes. So the International Fuel Gas Code, the National Fuel Gas Code, those types of things are also listed in those certifications that say the products meet the requirements of those codes. And then our UL certification is for fire stop listings. So that's for anytime you have an installation where there is a fire stop wall system set in place or required. It's common in apartment buildings and places like that. We have a pretty wide range of systems that WARDFlex and WARDFlexMAX can be installed with. So the tubing itself is made out of 304 stainless steel, and it's an annually corrugated tubing, which means that each corrugation is its individual ring. So it's not a helical corrugation like you would see on an appliance connector. And that's one of the telltale signs to tell that you have a CSST product. It comes with approval there from CSA for use in concealed location. Both WARDFlex and WARDFlexMAX have that. as well as the mechanical joint fittings. They can all be installed in concealed locations. And then they're both also approved for 25 PSI for the maximum operating pressure. Our tubing is quite flexible, and it has a tendency when you bend it into place, it stays there. There's no really noticeable recoil on that product. So when it's bent in, put into an installation, it's going to hold its shape. The reason for that is because we actually put the tubing after it's corrugated through a annealing oven, a short annealing oven process, where it takes some of the stress that was developed in that product and takes some of the rigidity out of it and gives it its flexibility back to the finished product there. The last thing to note about the tubing and the fittings actually is that they're a proprietary design. And what that means is that our tubing and our fittings are not interchangeable with other brands of CSST. You can only use CSST fittings and tubing with the brand that they're designed to be used with. There's no interchangeability among those types of products. So as I said, we have two different coatings, our standard yellow coating and then our black WARDFlexMAX coating. Now the coatings act very similarly in their main design. It gives us a place to put all of our identification markings, our traceability information, certification markings, and then also mark how many feet are left on a piece of tubing. And that's every 2 feet. So you'll see a marking every 2 feet, letting you know how much length you have left on that piece of tube for easy measurements. It also helps when the coating helps to drag tubing through structural members. So say if you're drilling holes in studs or joists and routing the tubing through there, that coating allows it to slide easier than if it were just bare tubing where those corrugations would be able to catch there on any edges in the holes. And then it also will help to protect against corrosive materials. So while stainless steel is a corrosion resistant material, it's not corrosion proof. There are chemicals out there that can attack the stainless and over time corrode it. And the coatings help to protect from that. If something were to spill on the coating and there's no exposed stainless steel there, there's no concern of corrosion taking place underneath there. The only difference between the yellow and the black is that the black coating is electrically conductive. There's materials built into that polyethylene blend that give it those properties, and that allows it so that WARDFlexMAX is listed as an arc-resistant CSST, meaning that it does not carry the same direct bonding requirements as yellow CSST. So in addition to all of that, both coatings also include UV inhibitors in that polyethylene blend. And what that means is that it can be installed outdoors and it can be exposed to UV rays. And then there's also flame retardant materials built into the coatings, which allows us to pass two different tests. One is ASTM E84, the other is ULC S102, and those are very similar tests. One is for the US, one is for Canada. And what that gives us is a flame spread and smoke density rating. And the rating that we have is below the 2550 threshold that building codes use for installing products, non-metallic products in plenums. So both WARDFlex and WARDFlexMAX can be installed in a plenum because they carry those ratings. So this next slide here, we're going to see a quick video showing many of the quality checks and some of the processes that the tubing goes through as we're manufacturing it and after we're manufacturing it there in the quality lab as well. If you've been through our plant, you've probably seen a lot of this, but I'll go through a little bit into some of the detail on what we're seeing here. So this first section is our pitch checker. So this is automatically done as the tubing's running, and what it's measuring there is the pitch, which is our spacing between corrugations, which is a critical dimension because it goes and it has to correspond with the dimensions of the retainer ring. So if the pitch is out, the retainer won't fit on that tubing, which means you won't be able to attach your fittings. And then you'll see here that as after the tubing is made, a piece from each drum that's made goes in the lab, and a quality technician actually does measurements on a comparator here. And there they check the pitch, the diameters, and all the critical dimensions. This is showing our tubing coming out of the annealing oven. So as I said, we put our tubing through an annealing operation after it's corrugated. And you'll see in a lot of our literature that we say it's it's double annealed. And what that means is that stainless steel, when we get it, is already annealed. That's just something that with stainless steel, it is an annealed material. Then we corrugate it, and then we re-anneal it. Basically, we put it through a short cycle to help draw out some of the flexibility there. So, and that again, that's what gives us our exceptional flexibility in the product, and that's why when you bend it, it stays in place. And you can see here, I mean, it can be bent into a pretzel basically, and there's really no resistance to doing that. It's easy to do. The next few tests we're going to see are actually prescribed by the ANSI LC1 standard. This first one is a axial test here. So what you're trying to show here is that when you put a certain load and pull that tubing and stretch it out, that you don't pull the seal apart there, so that the tubing and the fitting stay engaged there and you don't lose your seal. This is all done while it's under pressure. And you'll see here in a moment, there's going to be a bubble checker there that would indicate if a leak were to happen. So as you see here, there's no leak taking place. And that's until we get to the point where we take it to failure, which here is the value we got to on that test for failure, which was over 2,500 pounds. You can see it stretches it right out, and it doesn't damage the tubing itself. What ends up happening is you eventually start to pull that tubing, this section here, out from between your seal there, between the retainer and the fitting body, which we'll see how that seal looks later. But that's what it's ripping apart. But again, it doesn't happen until you get upwards of 2,000 psi. And that's not something you'd ever expect customers to experience in real life there. This next test here, what we're required to do is drop that weight, which is a 10-pound weight, from 3 feet. We drop it on the tubing in 5 locations. And then we take that piece, pressurize it at 40 psi, and see if it leaks. So it cannot leak. The requirement from the standard is that no leaks develop due to that kind of impact. And again, here you'll see after that's done, there's no leaks. This is done on a pretty regular interval here for all sizes of tubing to make sure that we don't have any issues with the material or the welds. And again, you wouldn't expect to see anything like that in the field unless it's some kind of freak occurrence. So this test here is one of our fan favorites. So if you've been in for a tour and you've gotten a chance to see the quality checks, chances are you've seen this, and it's a pretty exciting one. So as I said earlier, the tubing's rated for 25 psi. We're required to do a hydrostatic test of 250 psi for 5 minutes, which this piece of tubing's already gone through that. And then what we do next is we take that tubing failure to see what the maximum pressure is we'll get to. As you can see here, I have it paused. We're already up over 2,000 psi, and I'll unpause this here so we can see how it. Why it does that? Okay, here we go. Okay, so over 2,300 psi is what that failed at, which is almost 100 times the rated pressure. Now, one example of a real life situation with this is last year in Massachusetts, there was an event where the pressure inside of homes in a certain neighborhood increased to over 100 psi. And what happened was the leaks were developed. Inspections had to take place where all homes had to have their gas system inspected to make sure there was no damage to any systems. And throughout that, there were no known instances where CSST was damaged due to that. So, and as you saw there, it can be pressurized up over 2,000 psi. So 100 psi is something that the tubing can handle. So here you'll see this is the piece that was tested. So it broke right there on the actual steel. That line there is the weld. So that's showing that our weld is harder or stronger than the raw material that we use to make the tubing, which is what we want each time. This machine that you're seeing here is actually measuring that weld. It's going to measure the width, the thickness, and the hardness of the weld. And we do this on every drum that goes through to ensure that we have a good, consistent process from shift to shift, from hoop to hoop, as it's done consistently. And then this final station that you're going to see here is the helium leak test. This is the most critical test that we do here. 100% of the tubing we make goes through this test, and it has to be leak-free in that helium chamber. So what we do there, we fill that whole piece up with helium, stick it in a vacuum chamber, and essentially try to suck the helium through the tubing to find any small leaks or anything like that that would deem it unacceptable. And if we do that, we take the material and we split it, the drums in half, and we retest the sections until we find that leak and minimize the scrap that we get. But every piece of tubing that goes down to the coating line and then further on to shipping goes through that test there. 100%, no exceptions. So then just to go back through what we just saw there, again, the helium test, that's critical to our whole operations and to the product line. It ensures that the tubing that you're going to get and that your customers are going to get is leak-free. The reason we use helium is because that's the smallest possible molecule we can use. So that's going to allow us to find much smaller leaks. It's a much more sensitive process than if we were to just use an air test there. And then the other test that you saw there, the pitch check, that happens 100% as it's going, and on each drum. The hardness test, again, that happens every day. And then the other tests there happen on a quarterly basis, and that's prescribed by the ANSI LC1 standard. So we make sure we at least follow the minimum requirements there. On many of them, we're doing it on a monthly basis, so we're exceeding that requirement. So now we'll switch gears a little bit and talk about the actual use of the product and how it's installed, specifically the fitting to tubing connection. The critical step here is that you have to start with a nice clean cut. So you want to see on that picture on the bottom, you want to see something like that, which is on the right, where you can see a full corrugation. There's no jagged edges like what you have on the left there, no burrs or anything like that. Those burrs there, one, it could rip the gasket that's inside the fitting, or it could even get to where you're not getting a good crush there, especially here where it looks like you might not even have a full corrugation there to use for your steel. Now, the way to ensure that you get this type of cut is to use the tubing cutter that we offer. That's designed specifically for CSSD, and it has a hardened wheel. And that's what's critical, that the tubing cutters that are used have a hardened or stainless steel wheel. Your regular tubing cutter that would be used for copper tubing, that wheel's not as hard as the stainless steel material that you're going to be cutting. So you're going to dull that blade, and you're going to get tubing that looks more like what was on the left there, the jagged edge tubing. So this is just a quick picture here to show the basic tools that are needed for a WARDFlex installation. Besides the tubing cutter for CSST, there's nothing new that an installer is going to have to get. So all your customers, plumbers, HVAC technicians, they're going to have all the tools they need already in their truck. A couple wrenches, a utility knife, and a cordless drill is typically all that's really needed beyond our tubing, besides our tubing cutter, to do a normal installation. So here we're going to see a quick video. It's about a 90-second video here just to show how quick and how easy this fitting goes together with our tubing. So we're going to go through the four main steps here to the installation. So step one is you cut the tubing to the length that you need. So you'll see here, it's just like any tubing cutter. You operate it the same way. You rotate it and tighten that knob as you go. And in a few revolutions, you get a nice clean cut here. The next thing he's going to do is he's going to expose 4 corrugations there. 4 corrugations is our ideal number that allows the coating and the tubing to mate up, and so that there's no exposed stainless. With our WARDFlex MAX coating, we actually specify a maximum of 5 corrugations. So if it's cut back more than 5, it needs to be recut so you shorten that up. So the next step is to put the fitting on the tubing, starting with the nut, then the retainer ring, which is split into 2 pieces. And you'll see here that he leaves 1 stainless steel corrugation exposed there that goes between that retainer and the inside of the fitting. And then the final step is to tighten that nut. You rotate the nut until it contacts the body, and typically that fitting would already be installed into an appliance or to another connection. So holding it the way he's having to do for the demonstration isn't the way it would need to be done in the field, but it gives a quick idea of how it's just a couple quick turns and it's done. There's no guesswork here. Once that nut stops turning and it contacts the body, that indicates that your assembly is complete and you're going to have a good seal. As long as all those steps are followed, you'll get a good reliable seal every time. So as I said there, you saw the corrugation that gets pushed down inside the fitting to make the seal. And this is how that actually looks. So this is a cutout of our fitting after it's been assembled. So this thicker section of stainless steel is actually two sections of 1 corrugation. So it's both sides there that got crimped down inside there to make our seals. And you'll hear it said, and you'll see it on some of our literature, we have a dual seal fitting. What this means is we have a metal to metal seal right here between that stainless steel and the inside of the brass fitting. And then we also have a gasket to stainless steel seal as well. And that acts as a redundancy seal. So this is our main seal here. This acts as a backup essentially. You saw how easily it goes together. It comes apart just as easily, just with a couple turns with a wrench. And then the fittings are reusable. The only thing that needs to be taken into account there is that the components are all there when you take it apart, that you don't lose any of the retainer or anything like that, and this gasket is not damaged in any way. So there's no rips or tears in the gasket. It will be a little compressed. That's okay. What we don't want to see is that material's being peeled away or anything, which if you have a nice clean cut where you have that full corrugation to crush there, no jagged edges, that's typically not going to be an issue. You're going to have a reusable fitting after that. So then, as I said earlier, we have a full line of fittings to go along with the WARDFlex tubing. You saw the mechanical joint fitting there in the video, but we offer keys, couplings, termination fittings that are used to terminate before a movable appliance or something like that. And we have that for all sizes. That's a full range of those parts. We also offer manifold stations, valves, stub outs, protection devices, which the striker plates that we supply are actually required as part of our product line to be used with WARDFlex anytime that the product's going to be concealed, say inside of a wall cavity or something where it's passing through studs. The striker plates that we supply are what has to be used, and that's because they're required to go through a more stringent test as part of the ANSI LC1 standard than what the typical striker plates that you get at an electrical store or at the hardware store. We also offer the tools that are needed to install the tubing. The tubing cutter we offer, the yellow one you saw there will cut from sizes 3/8 up through 1.25 inch. And then we also offer a rigid tubing cutter that will cut the 1.5 and 2 inch. And then along with this, as we talked earlier, we make malleable iron pipe fittings and steel pipe nipples at our other facilities, which can be used to round out all your final connections there. So you have a true from meter to the end of the system in a home. You can get all the products that you need for an installation right from under one roof. So we'll just go back through here and touch on the main things we talked about and the main taking away points here. So the fittings they're easy to assemble, they're easy to take apart, and they are completely reusable. You just have to make sure that the components are all there and the gasket's intact. The fitting, when putting it together, there's no guesswork, there's no special tools that are needed. You don't need to measure the torque or anything like that. So as you saw in the video, you tighten that down until the nut stops rotating and you're done. There's no guessing, no measuring, and you're good to go on to the next fitting that quick. Every inch of our tubing that we make here is vacuum tested with helium. So we go through a leak test. 100% of all CSST that goes out the door goes through that test, and I cannot move on to the next stage without passing. Again, we offer the tubing cutters that are necessary to make sure you get a good clean cut, and that way you know that you're going to get a good reliable seal time in and time out. Beyond that, there's no special tools that installers have to buy. There's no special power tools. There's no flaring tools involved with this. It's just that tubing cutter. Then you're going to have everything that you need. Just a couple wrenches, a knife, and you're good to go. WARDFlex is still offered both with the yellow coating for our standard WARDFlex CSST, and then we also offer the black arc-resistant WARDFlexMAX. And the fittings that is used for those two systems is exactly the same. So the only difference there is that coating, the stainless steel tubing underneath, that's exactly the same dimensions. It's made at the exact same time. There's no different routing or anything how it goes through the process. So that's why the fittings are the same for either product. And then again, the flexibility of our product is one of the main points to this. That's one of the main benefits to using it. And it's so flexible because we go through that second annealing operation as part of our process and take that extra step to make sure that it's going to be the easiest product to use once you get your hands on it. So I just wanted to say thanks for your time. I hope this was useful here for everybody, and you learned something, or you got some new information, or a good refresher.